Good morning, everybody, and we're live. How y'all doing? Hope everyone's having a fantastic Sunday. Let's see who we've got on the Instagram. We've got Dr. Jimbo Jones, we've got a HPO Umbra, got Green and Mason, Caroline MP Griffin, Krusty Crops, Drop Bear Genetics, Coco Gardens, Sweet Baby May, and DJ Vovo. Yeah, so I hope everyone's having a terrific one. It's been a warm one this weekend, so trying to stay cool. Hope you're doing the same. So yeah, you know what it is. Just kind of hit us with questions in the comments. I'll get on over to the chat, see what's going on YouTube and all that sort of stuff, or Twitch. Thank you for the new follows, by the way, on there. That's been cool to see. We have peppermint tea this morning. An interesting choice, a fresh choice. Oh, Twin Flame, nice to see you. And Gumby, nice to see you as well. And yeah, I agree, DJ. Yeah, happy Sunday to you, to Grin and Mason. Don't mind me, I'm just still collecting my thoughts. I have simultaneous thought streams going on at the moment. All right, so if no one's sort of got anything right up off the top, I sort of figured we could talk about autos because everyone lately wants to talk about autos. So I'll kind of mention a few things that have been on my mind about them or that I keep getting asked. But also, if you have other stuff relating to in and around that orbit, put it in there. Nice to see you, Causa. A double Causa. A double Causa. So one that I get quite a lot is, well, I suppose with regard to the different grow dirts, what are the different ones? The seed starter one's pretty obvious. It's kind of a blend optimized for small containers, but it more seems to be some confusion between the light soil and the full spec. And really, the light soil was kind of optimized for plants like autos that once they're going, they're kind of very strong growing normally, but you've kind of got to get them there first. So there's a tendency to overwater them, give them too much too soon, and kind of stunt them out in really heavily amended, very dense and thus very high moisture hold mixes like the kind of water-only soils. The Gorilla is kind of a bit of a special case in point because it's very well oxygenated. But yeah, in terms of indoors, I personally prefer the light soil with just a bit of augmentation for autos. And then that way you can kind of find the line of where they're happy. Whereas photos, I sort of prefer the full spectrum soil. Some people also like the island blend for that sort of stuff as well. Similar to the light soil, but functions a bit differently. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on that. And Baby May is going to run some autos. Mason is doing some Moscas, or has probably just done some Moscas. I think that's what he's talking about. Nice. Nice to see you, Gypsoy. Yeah, so autos are popular because some people, they're simpler in a way because you basically set and forget as far as photo period, things like that kind of go. That swap to and the process of doing that is kind of daunting for some people, especially when they're first starting out. So autos are attractive that way. The other thing that makes them of an advantage is they're just often really quite fast. You're looking at quite a fast turnaround. So that makes them appealing. The fact that the quality of them has increased markedly over the last few years helps a great deal more, because they used to sort of be quite markedly lesser, in my opinion. But yeah, there's been a hell of a lot of work done by a lot of very talented people that makes them a very good and attractive choice. But yeah, the speed with which they work is an advantage, but also a disadvantage, because you don't really have much time. You can't really extend its life cycle, right? It's kind of going to grow for X amount of days. So if you have a major setback, it's a really huge setback. It's almost like there's dog years. There's almost like auto years or auto days. A day to an auto is a much bigger day than it is to a photo period plant, is kind of one way you could look at it. So even things like training techniques, you've kind of got to be a little bit careful on what you do and how often you do it, because if you're setting things back too often, too soon all the time, you could be just stacking stress on top of stress on top of stress and not really achieving the point of training, which is a bigger plant. You're kind of just stunting the plant, bonsaiing it effectively. Oh, speak of autos, and Aussie Autos if official appears. And twin flame, just while we were talking about the light soil, yeah. So for things like your earlier land races, things that basically weren't bred to deal with huge amounts of fertilizer where they're being pushed all the time, you'll often find that strains that come from impoverished places tend to run on the scent of an oily rag because it makes sense. Fertilizer is hard to come by. You might have even seen some photos getting around the gram of things basically just growing in sand and gravel and not a bunch more. I mean, if they're adapted and all the rest of it, it is what it is. So yeah, the light soil is good for those, but it's also good because they tend to grow for a long period of time. They tend to pack out the roots real hard. The light soil stays very oxygenated over time, and I find that the ability to top it up more often is sort of helpful for those sort of varieties. Okay, Liam. Would I run the same feed schedule on autos? There is a light soil one now. I did put it up in the Discord, but it probably hasn't made its way officially onto the website yet. Maybe I'll have to check with Umbra. But yeah, there is a specific light soil program. It's quite similar to the full spec one. And for autos, you can probably be a bit more conservative than you would think. You're not trying to make up a massive dearth of nutrition in the light soil. It's got a good solid foundation and you're just augmenting that. And yeah, Mason, they can be finicky, but I tend to find like kind of feathering it is kind of the way to go. Sort of like get them going, get them to a point where they're like really moving, wanting to move, and then kind of just pour it on from there, so you don't lose traction. Yeah, Aussie Auto's ears must have been, but I hear that if you mention ruderalis anywhere in the country, it's like a bat signal that just kind of goes up. Grow Green Daddy, nice to see you as always. Grow Green Daddy, you'd have to nearly be there on like week 530. It'll be ready soon with the dots. And Capital, nice to see you too. Some votes there in the comments for autos outside. So yeah, convenient in a lot of ways for people. Set and forget. They're very useful outside in a lot of places too, where you might be trying to start things early, right? A lot of strains are not bred to sort of be acclimated to our relatively short growing period days. And so they can have a tendency, if you're not augmenting that light somehow, which for most people is pretty impractical, they have a tendency to kind of get to a certain point, kind of start flowering and then kind of oscillate and don't produce a really great quality thing. Thus, you're better planting them later. This saves all that kind of effectively like a re-veg. So autos kind of get around that. They just kind of do what they do. If anything, the slightly longer days are of an advantage for them because they can tolerate and use more. October. This October? This one coming? Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I'll mark it on the calendar. The big day. Yeah. And Seals, nice to see you too. It's great to see some regular people. That's good. That I haven't bored you all to death yet. Mm. So yeah, in terms of feeding them too, I tend to prefer like there's ones that go for longer, and then there's ones that tend to go for shorter. So your ones that are going around 12 weeks from start to finish are probably on the longer side. Warwick Gange will probably drop in at some point. He's another one where whenever you start mentioning this topic, normally appears. But yeah, the ones that go for longer obviously offer a bit more opportunity to kind of play with levels of things and feeding certain things a bit more than the shorter ones. The shorter ones, I tend to just like a really simple, balanced approach to it. So I'll probably just use Herb Superb Balance, bit of Stone Age, brew a bit of this here and there, maybe. Definitely run some Aquamarine and Ocean Potion, just because I can't see the point not to, and would run the microbes. But even then, sort of not everything all the time. It's kind of just every other watering, giving something. Whereas for a longer flowering one, I may go sort of some supergrass up front, balance in the middle, mega yield later on, because there's more space due to the time it takes for top dressings typically to become available. There's no point trying to stack them too close together. So that's where, balanced for shorter ones. Balance, even getting back to what we were saying before about the longer flowering heirlooms and land races, is probably a way to go for those too, because it's hard to know where the midway point is. They don't really have one, and they tend to prefer nitrogen throughout than pulling back on that or upping phosphorus and potassium. So yeah, that also just allows like ease, and then let them go on a balanced program until they kind of look like they've had enough. Oh, solo cup or die. Nice one. Yeah, I've been known to rip a mean solo cup. Day 233. Yeah, still milky, waiting for that lovely clear. Otto is there, and Dactyos. Nice to see you as well. Me too, Otto. I agree. I'll just leave that one in the comments, but it is a big ass hat, man. Like, I think, what is this goddamn thing? It is a. So this is why you got to stop like telling me nice things. The size of my cranium is just gigantic. It is a large, extra large. So, yeah. Think of big thoughts. Got to stuff it all in the hat. Yeah, gigantic. So someone asking about something that I more got into in the Discord, which was pre-chewing kind of your top dressings for your plants. So yeah, like pre-chewed soil food effectively. So what I've kind of been doing is experimenting with mixing a portion of castings or compost, a smallish amount, not so much that it's going to heat up to any large degree, with the top dressings that I'm going to apply, moistening that down and allowing that to kind of do its own thing somewhere cool and dark for about a week to 10 days. And it'll obviously erupt with a whole bunch of microbes, whether you use castings or whether you use compost. And then applying it to the soil when it's at maximum fluffiness. That is something I've been doing. It's something that is producing some really phenomenal results. You don't seem to have the lag of a regular top dress where you kind of, it dips and then bounces back up again. You just seem to get the bounce and then it seems to continue feeding from there. It's a little bit tricky to pull off. You obviously need to have enough air exchange that it doesn't sort of go anaerobic and kind of start to ferment. But you also don't want so much that it dries out. But the real advantage of doing it is that you can kind of set up your top dressings a week or so before you're actually going to use them, and so have them ready to go at their sort of, you know, what I would like to think is a very peak availability, or at least, you know, in terms of the microbes, they're kind of going off tap. I've put up some photos of them where they're extremely fluffy. So yeah, and I'm aware that you can mix all your amendments with your compost many months before and let that all break down. But what you'll be getting is kind of a different thing. You'll get the huge boom and then the die off, and you'll kind of get something more matured. Totally with that. This is kind of more akin to, if you've ever looked into compost teas, pre-feeding the compost or the castings before brewing it. This kind of came out of that, and also the fact that with nutrient teas, so nutrient brew kind of things, if you do that and you don't use compost, like, do me a favor next time and just check the volume of the particulate left even after a 24-hour brew with microbes, and you'll find that there's a lot of it's pretty much the same volume of material. It's swollen up a little bit, obviously, but yeah, you lose the fine particles into the water, and yeah, there's going to be some breakdown, but for the most part, you're not completely dissolving that stuff and breaking it down like it would if it were in the soil. That takes longer. So the idea was, okay, pre-feed, pre-chew it, and then apply it just directly to the soil as a top dressing. So you don't have to brew anything necessarily. Yeah, there's some setup time to it, but I mean, what's some Tupperware or a half full 10-liter bucket, something like that. It's pretty easy. And I would love to wave back to Greened Out Team, but I can't because I'm still using the sort of split thing at the moment. But we're working on stuff, all right? I got people working on things to help. Maximum Trade. And Mason there with watering practices at the start. Yeah, try and be precise. Try and not overwater. It's so easy to do because you want to do stuff and you think doing stuff will get you more. But sometimes what'll actually get you more is restraining yourself from doing stuff. Stop hitting yourself, aka stop overwatering stuff that's like clearly overwatered, because what it wants is not more water. What it wants is to chill for a minute. And yeah, Jimbo, my thinking cap. Critter Candy, nice to see you. Yeah, so try it out, that top dress thing. It's different, you know, in terms of like, you can just apply compost or you can just top dress with amendments, but it's kind of somewhere in between that and getting the ability to break down some of those things, but also have this just incredible, really microbe rich and active, highly active Big Benny. And potate phone, yeah. Well, I'm still a bit potate. I don't know what the speed is with the download on the Starlink, but the upload is a little bit not so great. It's probably my webcam too, but you know, it is what it is. Do you really want to see me in high def anyway? I mean, Pixel Cody is a much better me if I'm real about it. I wish I could be pixelated all the time. Rhinosaurus. Now that's a good one. How you going, brother? Wake me mojo before you go. Bill, nice to see you. And yeah, Green Supreme. Shout outs to Green Supreme just because I love that stuff. 8-bit Cody. Yeah, we're working on, we're going to gradually bring up the quality so it's not too much of a shock to you. So like 8-bit and 16-bit. Might even shoot for like CD quality at some point, like 24-bit. But you know, it'll probably be a hot minute before you see like 4K. That's just way beyond. And Bones in the Facebook. Yeah, we are. We are getting fancy now. Yeah, I got overlays and intro music, and yeah, the luxuries. Well, that's what I'm going for, Grey Green Daddy. I'm going for the soft hues. It's meant to be inviting, you know. Oh man, you guys are great. All right, hello Albie and hello EQ. Yeah. So I suppose while we're still orbiting the auto multiverse, Island Blend. What's the advantage with that one? So Island Blend is like the light soil, but even harder to overwater, and also very resistant to the natural pH drop of peat. So peat will want to trend towards acidification over time. Cocoa is, by its nature, close to neutral or around there. So yeah, it does have a different cation exchange. It gives up and holds different things. And it certainly, in my opinion, doesn't hold as much life as what peat moss does. Peat moss is really just stupendous for that. But yeah, the Island Blend is terrific for autos too, because it's very well oxygenated, really easy if you're using, you know, simple just sort of mix and go water and drain programs. So yeah, it's sort of a semi-popular blend for that, particularly inside, but even for people on decks, works very well. Works in auto pots, that kind of sub-irrigated system because it wicks quite well. But yeah, the oxygen level of it is of an advantage to people too, as is the ability to drain, as is just the inherent quality of cocoa, which is why it's such a popular media. I agree. The Green Supreme does smell a bit spicy. Whenever I'm making it, I have the respirator on because I call it spicy air. Oswald, nice to see you. What you gonna do? Another one. And gypsoy. Well, I mean, I didn't say impossible to overwater. It's always possible to overwater anything. It's just harder. So you will find with Island Blend that it definitely holds more water than a regular cocoa because it isn't a regular cocoa. There's like, cocoa normally has like one ingredient, cocoa, or maybe perlite, cocoa and perlite. Island Blend's got like a whole gang of stuff in there, and some of that gang of stuff, independently of the cocoa, holds moisture. So just by its nature of having been amended organically, it will hold more moisture. It's not dramatic. It's certainly not, you know, sort of a water only heavily amended soil. But yeah, does it hold more than just your average? It weighs more, it holds more than your average cocoa or cocoa perlite blend. Well, thank you, Albie. We appreciate that, sir. And yeah, now that's an awesome. I'm just going to say, g'day, Govern, but that's an awesome screen name. That's terrific. And Watts, great to see you. Yeah, cool. What's as part of the original people? D-Day. Grow Green Daddy. Island blend for sip. I mean, you can use that, but even the peat soils wick up quite well, my dude. So yeah, there's some people that use a mixture of all kind of different things: cocoa, hydrogen, or leca. You want to pick things that naturally want to wick easily. So like the soils tend to wick pretty well once they're moistened down fully. Peat is naturally pretty hydrophobic, so you've got to get it moist first. That's where I've kind of been suggesting to some people that if you can, set your pots up, water them very well before you plant, preferably 24 hours before you plant, and allow them to drain fully, and then plant into that. You may even find when you go to plant that, there's a dry pocket there or something like that, Green Supreme will help a little bit. It's got saponins in it. But still, it's really just carefully moistening down that soil a bit further to sort of make sure that it is going to wick properly. But once it is at that level, it'll wick really quite well. The Island blend wicks quite well. Cocoa by its nature wicks quite well, and it's not as hydrophobic. So yeah, it would be good in the drop down of a sip. Greened out team. Warrigange, I predicted it. So, you're welcome. It's kind of, the sips are a bit of an interesting case in point because, yeah, there is that one area that is in an anaerobic environment, but there is a lot of oxygenation happening in and around that. So yeah, it's kind of, if they're set up properly and maintained properly, then they shouldn't go anaerobic because that amount of oxygen should be sufficient. So I wouldn't really overthink that too much. By its nature, you're going to have anaerobic areas, but the way they work tends to sort of mitigate a lot of those issues. Dank Panda, all the way from Canada, and Defier. Oh, and Seacliff. He's from New Zealand. Makes some lovely things. Awareness on the YouTube by the look of it. Thoughts on using micronized gypsum. So like the micronized sort of suspensions that they sell. Yeah, it's kind of immediately available. It's not really fully available. It still has to be made available through activity in the soil. The Epsom salt is going to be rapidly available. But I really think that a lot of people over-apply Epsom salt anyway, and then just exacerbate the whole calcium magnesium issue that they've got. What you probably find for a lot of people is that they're over-applying potassium, which is antagonizing calcium uptake because the plant will uptake it preferentially, and then causing CalMag issues. So yeah, if rather than applying mag, see if there's not potassium you can kind of pull back on a little bit in relation to the calcium and see if that doesn't help. Sometimes it's not so much adding more of something in soil, it's taking something out. And sometimes it's adding more. Or sometimes it's halving the amount and, adding both. So it's all a little bit confusing. The Soil Farmer. Doing big things. Yeah, I've seen the rusty nail trick. That was effectively just something to give iron, or some old nursery trick. It's not some magical, my personal opinion, it's not some magical secret that's going to increase the dry active value of your stuff. And yeah, I think that's a good point. Aussie Autos getting back to sub-irrigated. So I don't think it matters what you're using. Like I know there's some very intelligent watering systems. There's some that are quite good at keeping an equilibrium depending on how they're set up. I still think you got to check in with your plants and not just fully depend on that sort of stuff. Because I mean, even with fully functioning hydroponic systems, most of the job that they have is checking the system to make sure that everything's not getting clogged, running correctly, that sort of thing. So I consider manually watering periodically, checking in. It offers the ability to add things that if you are sub-irrigating, you might not have the opportunity to do. So there's that. If you're the type that just loves to do stuff and give the plants things more often, and they're showing a need for that, then you can kind of use that as an opportunity to do it. But even just watering manually at least once a week, I think is a great way to spend some time in the garden, but also make sure that your watering system is working correctly. Because sometimes if you have a lot of uptake, the drippers and everything, they're just not keeping up with as much as you thought they would, and dry soil is kind of not really doing much for your plants. So if you've got a 40-litre pot and only 35 litres of it is properly moistened, the roots aren't going to grow into the dry part. So you've really only got a 35-litre pot. So think about that. Yeah, I mean, some they get propagated. Like it's like any level of bro science, you know. If you've ever hung around gyms or anything, any activity, there's always a level of kind of bro science. There's grow science too. But yeah, the nail trick, there's razor blade trick, the sort of thing. There's all sorts of different things that people have done. But I mean, if a lot of them really work, they would be more widely adopted and probably used by large firms because they've got a considerable interest in maximizing output. A lot of the biggest firms aren't particularly good at that. So I'm just checking I haven't missed anybody. I don't think I have, actually. I think we're on to it today. Grows Clover. Lovely to see you. No, that's a great saying from Dactyos. There is touch your plants and talk to them as often as you can. Every tickle is a nickel. So there you go. Yeah, and one there from Defier, who is an incredibly attentive gardener. That is the additive that no one can sell you, is you and your time in the garden. So for all of the good things that we can make and offer you to give your garden, the most important ingredient is you. Yeah, and no level of tech will ever fully get rid of that. And even if it does, you'll probably find the product is like soulless and missing some inherent quality, kind of like AI art or something like that. So just kind of be in and around it as much as you can. And I mean, really, you know, unless you've got some real aversion to that, it's a great place to spend your time. Certainly better than sitting on a lounge watching Netflix. Yeah, so one there from Warriganj. Some sub-irrigated systems like the auto pots can be a bit tricky when you've got many different ones going. In theory, each one should just kind of be doing its own thing, uptaking as they need to, but they're also the sort of thing that have to be checked. The little valve thing is a little bit tricky sometimes with particulate matter that can get in there. Fabric pots are really cool for that. Built-in filter and pot, great. But even still, they just biofilm and things like that will sometimes stop them from working correctly. So yeah, they can be a bit tricky that way. But I mean, regular sub-irrigated ones are got many less moving parts, so to speak, and they're much more user-friendly. So it's not like the concept of sub-irrigation is flawed. It's more just a case of, I think the simpler you go with it, probably the better it's got to be. And, you know, you could argue that with a lot of different things. King's Evil, nice to see you. Oh, there you go. There's another great quote from Coco Gardens. So the best thing for the garden is a gardener's shadow. Yeah, it's the only shadow that they grow more in when they're in it. Out West Gorilla. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of guys in the comments, or a lot of people in the comments there get it. So yeah, get in there, spend some time in there. And you know, if you're in a privileged position where you need a watering system to kind of take care of them because you got so many, well, good on you. Who's styling out? Shout outs to all the new members on the Discord too. We've had a bunch of new people join. There's a pretty active community going on there at the moment. So if you haven't popped on by, there's an equal mix of ridiculousness and really solid information from really cool people. So yeah, you know, jump on over there, check it out. Sometimes we give stuff away. We mostly just dispense laughs. So, and everyone needs that. And they're free laughs. So yeah, before, and I should probably stop saying so yeah. Nervous tics, right? But yeah, while we're on the subject of autos, is there anything else that anyone wants to raise? And then we may jump to something else. Maybe someone's got me some stuff. If you go to the, so we set up a thingy. So if you go to the Instagram profile page, in the bio, there's a link tree. Click on the link tree. That'll take you to the Discord. Click on the Discord. You can find the Discord there, the YouTube there, the Twitch there, the Facebook, the Instagram, the OnlyFans, all of it. It's all there. But yeah, so just Linktree, Discord, see you there. Be hella good to have you on there. Oh, there you go. And Umbra, not missing a beat, sticking that in the comment there for you. So you could also just click that link there. Coffin house for extra frost. Yeah, I mean, some people water their plants with water from their dehumidifier or air conditioner too. And while in theory that could be very clean water, it could also have metals and oils, like mineral oil that's put on the outside of stuff to kind of stop it from corroding. There could be a bunch of contamination in that. So I personally don't like to use that water on my plants, but it could be good for copper. And then you don't have to buy the nails. You don't have to buy the nails anyway, but you know. a few subscribers on the OnlyFans. Yeah. Sweet Organics, nice to see you. Just go for a trip to the beach, Warrigange, and just sort of sit them on the bonnet of your car for the day while you're there. You come back in the afternoon, those things will be well rusty. I remember when I lived near the beach, it used to be a challenge to stop anything from getting corroded. Your windows would even get sort of salt spray and stuff on them. And I wasn't even that close. Bernie and Mel with some impressive chilies. I've got some interesting chilies in at the moment, actually. There's a bunch of different sort of ones. Italian pepperoni. I have a Trinidad scorpion. I have a Chupatino, I think it's called, or Chupatino. Yeah, there's a few different ones out there. Right, so what else have we got going on here? So there's one there from Governed. What size bed / I suppose media container would you need for no-till? I think something 80 to 100 litres is a good starting point. I say starting point because it tends to work better the bigger the container you go. So if you can get to a couple of 100 litres, that's really ideal. But yeah, 100 litres will satisfy most people quite well. It's about double what you would use for a sort of flip and turn, aka run it, tap it out, or use up a lot of it, re-amend it, bake it, send it back. It's bit more than double what you would use for that, which gives you normally enough reserve to make it through that level with just top dressing and adding back in on top rather than having to put a lot in that way. I feel like I'm going to sneeze. You know how like you feel like you're going to sneeze, but like it doesn't want to sneeze. It's just like hanging around there waiting for me to start talking, and then I'm going to sneeze. I think it's gone. Yeah, it's gone. All right, good. False alarm. Do I have any chili seeds that that you can have? Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I am specifically talking about chilies, by the way. Yeah, I do. I am into chilies, different kinds, chilies of the world. The Jamaican ones are sort of some of the ones that I really like. Again, that sounds, but yeah, literally, the sort of the little bell-shaped sort of ones are fantastic. See, Greened Out Team, he has so many different ones. I think he was sort of planning something with that, so he's probably the dude. And no worries, Governed. Happy to help. The general rule of thumb with trying to go no-till is that you want more in reserve, because if you're trying to take a lot of plant matter out of an average size, and even like 40 litres might seem like a lot, but it's a pretty average size container really when you look at the stuff that people are trying to yield out of that level of media. And then if you look at plant, and then you've got to kind of try and put plant back into media, it's difficult to do that just with top dressing if you don't have a large amount of reserve there to begin with. I hope that makes sense. The super hot chilies I'm not really sort of into, like the Reaper. I had an unfortunate experience of eating one of those one time. Someone just handed it to me and I thought it was a cherry tomato, and just threw it in the mouth and started chewing on it, and it nearly like paled me out. I went all white. I was sweating. Yeah, not good. Dankden, the best in the West. How you going? But yeah, chilies, they're quite resilient. You can sometimes keep them for many years. I've had some that are almost like bonsais. There's a sort of a lantern type chili that I've got, bell sort of chili, I think my mum calls it. That yeah, it's seemingly indestructible. It seems to be able to dry right out and just become like a stick, and then you water it and it comes back to life again. The most interesting one that I ever had was a Galapagos Island chili. It had furry leaves and these tiny little chilies that only ever had around 1 or 2 seeds in them. They were very hot and they had like a real fruity flavor. But yeah, it was an interesting plant, that one. Galapagoenses, if I'm not. That's all Latin to me anyway. But yeah, I believe it was Galapagoense. Dank Dan, he's got the milling grain going on. He can't hear anything. Oh my God. Just lip read, dude. Just try and read through the pixels. I'm talk straight to the camera. Some might argue you're in a privileged position. So yeah. Oh wow. Been on for 44 minutes. Time flies when you are having fun. Okay, so there's no more there. That's it. You're right, Dang Dan. I was talking about chilies, so did well, dude. RG Limon. I planted some of those. I think they're an Italian one, aren't they? If I remember right, a little tiny yellow one. I planted some of those and they didn't come up. I stored them too long. Damn it. So yeah, but they are a very flavorful one. The Hungarian wax pepper is also one that I really like. Another one there from Awareness on the YouTube. Can adding sulfur, as in adding it to plants that are already growing, there's better ways of giving your plants sulfur if you're trying to correct a sulfur deficiency. Any sulfate, So calcium sulfate is normally a pretty safe one. Potassium sulfate if you've got some need for potassium. So you're getting the element plus the sulfur. Adding just straight elemental sulfur is definitely going to affect and influence your pH. What basically happens is the chemical reaction produces sulfuric acid in the soil. However much sulfur you apply is however much, and the activity in the soil too, but that's going to depend on how much of that is produced. And if that swings too wildly or is too caustic, then that could screw up your plant roots. So pH adjustment in organics isn't really something you should be trying to do on the fly. You can make up for calcium, you can make up for trace minerals and things like that through various different means, but actually trying to adjust the media, short of just adding a little bit of lime or something like that for some calcium when it's showing very low. But trying to adjust it down is kind of dangerous, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. So yeah, I wouldn't really recommend just adding sulfur to your, if you test it and it's low, or you test it and you need to bring it down, just don't use as much buffering next time, and you should be fine. It's easy to overdo it sometimes and end up with your pH a little high. So, or if you find that this is also the advantage for cooking your batch as well in advance. So cook them in advance, check them. Just get one of those dye kits. Don't trust the probes. Like I did this the other day. I bought 4 of those goddamn things off eBay, and I know there's some expensive ones. I paid anywhere from like a few bucks all the way up to like $50. And I tried them. I stuck them in the soil. They all just read random stuff. They don't read the moisture right. They don't read the pH right. They're effectively useless. So how you use those is you throw it that way as hard as you can, and you run the opposite way as hard as you can to the hardware store and buy a dye test kit for your pH and just check it that way. It's good enough for most home gardeners. You're not aiming to be on a fraction of a percentage point. You just need to know, like, is it yellow or is it pink? And chances are if it's green to like, emerald green, you're good. For most people, that's going to work better. But yeah, try and set that well in advance before you put plants in it, because it's not something that's easily adjustable on the fly. Vans, nice to see you. Sorry, I got a bit heated there for a moment because like some people stick those things in the dirt and be like, it's saying that it's this, and it's like, you could just, it doesn't measure anything. It's just going, I think it's this. Like, I think the weather in Paraguay at the moment is 13 degrees. I got no idea. No idea. Does that mean it's 13 degrees? I don't know. People sort of obsess about metrics about that a little bit too much, I think, too. So craft blend and those sort of things, if you've looked into them, it's basically like a huge amount of different liming sources. And Solomon, like Steve Solomon, was developing it. He's on an acidic soil, so Pacific Northwest. So they've got a scenario going on. And so adding does suit that. If you try to kind of do the same thing in a heavy clay area, it might not perform as well. But in general, for like most peat-based media is quite well. But people really thinking in hydrothink, where fractions of a percentage point on pH really do influence what's available, because you're dealing with a solution. Soil is not a solution. I mean, it's a solution to not having to worry about that crap, meters, and you just kind of give up on that after a while. Most people do. But yeah, you're not dealing with solution-based stuff. And so yeah, pH has some relative value to what you're doing, but you're not chasing little dots. It's not a video game. It's basically just, does it have what it needs there? Cool. If it's got what it needs there, then realistically, most of the time, it's not a deficiency. Most of the time, it's, say, a deficiency in watering, or deficiency in environment, deficiency in genetics. There's a variety of, things that can be deficient in that aren't nutrients. You make the same mix and give it to a bunch of different things and have different results based on just different environments, different plants, different people. Well, I mean, hey, Jimbo, if it was the first time you'd ever bought it, then you sort of might want to check it. And hey, you don't want to go and drop like 300 on a meter. So you buy one of you think like, hey, I'm not going to buy the $3 one on eBay. I'll buy the $30 one. It's 10 times betterer. And it's not, because you open it up and there's the same electronics in there. It's the same stupid. They don't work. Sorry, but I'm not sorry. One there from the soil farmer that I'll agree with is the best soil tester on the market is your own nose. Did you know you can taste your soil? Like, when they talk about soil being sour or being sweet. So acidic soil will be sour when you taste it. Stuff that's really alkaline will taste sweet. So, yeah, take that one home. Yeah, in soil, the pH is just like, yeah, people chase things like that too much, I think. And there's other things that you could be attending to that'll actually get you some good results. It's the same as kind of buffering your mixes that you're feeding your soil. Your soil's doing the buffering. So unless you're dealing with some stuff that's just wild in pH, that's going to literally drive it up, and then I would question why you're applying that to your soil. It's not doing anything. If anything, you're adding stuff like phosphoric acid, or even if you're using like acetic acid or citric acid, those are weak organic acids. Those are still chemically going to have a reaction in the soil and produce acetates and citrates. So, and phosphoric acid is going to react with other things. And so you're trending your soil down. So if you don't need to do that, don't do that. Let it kind of do its thing. Yeah, it is phone number is what pH means, Dankdown. Agree, Jimbo. Agree. But sometimes just info for the sake of info. There are some people that test things. And by the way, I'm not suggesting taste your dirt. Don't ingest any of the stuff I make. I've said this heaps of times. Like, none of it is fit for human consumption or application. Like, wear a mask, gloves if you need them. Like, this, I want to make that real clear. Okay. But I'm just saying that's where that's where it kind of comes from. Is acidic soil is sour and more alkaline soil is sweet. Sweet lime. Soil taste. Yeah, it's a hard job checking batches to fire. Terrible day. Yeah, sorry, Jips. Like, I'm gonna have to ask you to read the manual and stop doing that. It's just definitely not good for you. We made it for them. So yeah, that's all you got to do there, bro. Just wrong application. K95 mask for Dr. Jimbo, but mostly when he's mixing up aquamarine, which makes sense. It's kind of the funkiest of all of it. Like, literally, whenever I open a bag of that, Parliament Funkadelic just plays in the air. It's like I open it up, flashlight, close it, neon light, close it. The Sheer Organic and Brentals, nice to see you. Greened Out team. Yeah, I mean, if you're not used to it, yeah. So, there's crustacean meal in there and all sorts of stuff. So, it's kind of on the bag. Maybe you've got like a little thing with crustacean. Josh D, nice to see you. I mean, I got to admit, like, I'm kind of used to getting like elbow deep / waist deep / neck deep in the dirt. But you know, I'm well acclimated to it, I guess. So I don't, yeah, it doesn't really bother me none. But I'm not you, and you're not me. And so if you, yeah, you should like wear a mask. Like it's particulate matter and dust. You don't need to be breathing that in for a start. Moisten things down when you're handling them is always smart. Like even if you're gonna just unrelated, but if you're gonna use perlite or something like that, just bung some holes, stab the bottom of the bag end to end, and then cut an opening in the top and just run water in through that thing until you just see the water kind of come clear out the bottom of it. Not only are you getting rid of that perlite dust, which is kind of doesn't need to be in your soil. It's not, you're adding it for drainage and all that sort of stuff. You're not adding it for the silica and aluminum that it brings with it. So you want the chunks, you don't want the dust. So wash the dust out. And then when you're handling it, it's not dusty at all. You can just mix it all up and you're not breathing in heavily silicated dust. You can't really do that sometimes with things like if you're mulching alpha mulch and you got a pest problem with gnats, you're trying to keep it dry, so wear a mask. It's dusty. Be the bees. I always like that one. That's a good one. Yeah, a lot of people actually get reactions to the acidicness. It's heavily acidic when it's fresh. It's not until it sort of dries that it becomes less so. But even then, it still can be an eye irritant. Doesn't feel good to get it in your eyes for sure. There was a product that they sold in Jamaica that was an eye drop, and I used to think how that would just be horrible to apply. I've never used it though, so who knows? It was like an 80s movie that I remember. I think it was Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. And that was what they were doing in that. They were putting stuff in their eyes. It was the new way. Now, I made it so that he couldn't actually, just specifically him, couldn't purchase any of the mulch through the site. So, yeah, just because I really like him, but I also really like irritating him. So it's a personal attack. It's nothing personal. So, yeah. But no, I mean, I think he ordered some for real. And there'll be some going out to stores and things like that soon. Just kidding around. We were without it for a while. People were asking me like if it's ever coming back. It'll be back for quite a while now. So it's all sorted out. Yeah. Well, I mean, just grab a dust mask. That's all you need. Yeah. All right. So we're nearly towards the end of the tea. Or there's a little tiny bit left. I reckon there's about another 2 questions worth of tea left in the cup. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. So, I mean, just due to the nature of web stuff, we restocked it and for some reason it disappeared off the Shopify. So if you were like, that's weird, why would you put up a post saying that you've got it back and then it's not on the site? It's there. It took us like 20 minutes or so to like fix the link. So if you were trying to buy it and you couldn't, it's there. Personalized masks. Yeah, well, I mean, they're a bit controversial there for a while. I was like kind of sort of not wanting to jump in. But as a safety thing, you know, like just genuinely for dealing with organics and I mean the dry soluble powders, right? The advantage is that you're getting heaps more actives in that container than what you would get dissolved into a liquid concentration, whatever you buy. You know, take a bottle, dry it out, see how much powder's there. Guarantee you it's not what's in a tub of Green Supreme. But yeah, you do have dust to contend with, so just try not to breathe it in. or wear protective gear, like the packaging suggests. We're obligated. That's all your fault, Umbra. Yeah, so it's that's fine. I know you're sorry. Yeah, see, they're Warwick Edge. It's like that's why I didn't want to jump in. G'day, BB192. All right, cool. So yeah, I know we all sort of like try and play tough a lot of the time, but you know, you are mortal, and so a little bit of protective gear, even when dealing with stuff that is non-toxic and all the rest of it, um, is just a good idea. Apparently, if you want free masks, you just got to hit up Dr. Jimbo in his comments, because he's just like bragging so hard that he's got access to these free masks. So everybody in the whole thing, jump in his DMs. And I'm definitely not going to repeat Dankden's advice. All right, cool. Well, yeah, that's an hour. My tea is done. I hope that we got some sort of questions answered and that you've got something out of this one. I always do. And we'll catch you on the next one.